The city lights glittered below as Harper stared out the window of her Brooklyn brownstone. The air buzzed with the energy of impending change, like static before a storm. The plan was set, the team was assembled, and soon, the board members of ArcLight Innovations would wish they'd never set eyes on the brilliant young engineer whose name they'd erased from their hallowed halls. In the heart of Manhattan, surrounded by the opulence of the Park Avenue penthouse he'd stolen from Harper, Gregory Shaw sipped aged scotch by the fire, unaware that shadows were gathering at his door. With each passing day, Harper closed in, exposing the rot within ArcLight and feeding breadcrumbs to the media. As the press began to pick up steam, she contacted former CEO Alastair Vance, her father's old friend and one of the only people at ArcLight who treated her with anything resembling kindness. Alastair had retired early, citing health issues, but she saw an opportunity and seized it. "Are you sure about this, Harper?" he asked when she tracked him down in the south of France. "Gregory can be a ruthless son of a bitch. Once he sets his sights on something, he doesn't yield." "He won't even realize I'm here," she replied, smiling faintly. "Let him keep thinking I'm gone. I have a list of everyone who betrayed me, and I intend to take them down one by one." Over the next few weeks, the narrative began to shift. First, a Wall Street Journal piece on a new bill making its way through Congress, drafted by none other than Senator Blake Mannheim, a man Harper had helped fund during his campaign. The bill sought to punish companies for suppressing employee equity and stealing IP, targeting ArcLight directly. Then, seemingly out of nowhere, Adrian Vale resurfaced with a bombshell interview on Bloomberg. He outlined the murky financial dealings that had led to his exile, naming Gregory Shaw directly as the culprit. And with each article, with every interview, Harper fed documents to anonymous sources, weaving a net of exposure that threatened to swallow ArcLight whole. Meanwhile, on the home front, Harper had been busy as well. She'd retained two of the best attorneys in the game, Parker Davis and Liam Grant. Davis, a shark who smelled blood in the water, and Grant, a specialist in tech law and intellectual property. As for Liam, Harper saw a kindred spirit, someone who understood the weight of her patents, the blood, sweat, and tears woven into the fabric of her work. They were an unlikely trio, but united by a common purpose. At their makeshift war room in the brownstone, they pored over contracts, cross-referenced filings, and charted a course through the murky waters of corporate law. The battle wasn't just about retribution, it was about reclaiming what was rightfully hers, not just her patents, but her reputation, her life's work. In the midst of the chaos, Harper found a strange sense of calm. Every late night poring over documents, every phone call with a journalist brought her closer to equilibrium. She was a conductor leading an orchestra of justice, and each instrument, each note played perfectly, moved her closer to victory. And as the stakes rose, the betrayers grew uneasy. One by one, they began to circle the wagons, trading worried glances in hallways, clutching phones to their ears, whispering reassurances that weren't meant to reach anyone else's ears. But whisperings could be a weapon too, and news of their fears spread like wildfire through the veins of ArcLight. Harper, however, remained focused. She wasn't interested in their fears or their reassurances. She was interested in their deeds, their tangible actions, their fingerprints on the mounting evidence. She knew that in this game, every move mattered. In the high-stakes chess match of corporate espionage, there could be no blunders, no reckless abandon, only calculated precision. And she was playing to win. Back at the penthouse, Gregory Shaw paced his lavish office, his eyes narrowed, his jaw tight. Each new article felt like a slap, each leak from his own staff like a stab in the back. He was losing control and it terrified him. He'd clawed his way to the top by being one step ahead, by exploiting vulnerabilities, by crushing anyone who dared challenge him. But this was a different game altogether. To counterattack, he needed leverage, and he knew just where to find it. He dialed a familiar number, his voice clipped and sharp. "Find me everything you can on Harper Wren, her parents, her associates. Dig up dirt, leave nothing unturned." His voice echoed in the vast emptiness of his office. "Leave nothing unturned," he whispered. Meanwhile, Harper dove into the most crucial part of her strategy, strengthening her own defenses. She couldn't afford to be distracted, to stumble, or to lose focus. And that meant addressing the one vulnerability that could derail everything: her father. Ever since the death of her mother, Thomas Wren had retreated into himself, pouring all his energy into his work at the university and avoiding any mention of Harper's career. It broke her heart, but she understood. Now, however, was the time to heal that rift, to bring her father back into her life, not just for support, but as an active player in the game. She flew to Stanford, where her father was visiting for the year. The reunion was awkward at first, years of silence pressing down on them like a shroud. But as they talked, as Harper explained her plans, her father's eyes regained their spark, the spark that had inspired her, that had given her the courage to dream big. Soon, they were working side by side, poring over research papers, consulting experts, strengthening the foundation of Harper's case. She even reached out to the Wren's old friends, the ones who had distanced themselves out of respect for Thomas's wishes. And almost to a person, they pledged their support. When Harper returned to Brooklyn, she was ready to fight. Armed with her father's knowledge, his connections, and a renewed sense of family, she took on the titans of corporate America, determined to show that brains, brilliance, and integrity could conquer even the coldest, harshest betrayal. The story of Harper Wren was far from over. In fact, it was just beginning. On a blustery November afternoon, the news broke. A group of investors led by Alistair Vance was acquiring a controlling interest in ArcLight Innovations. The terms were favorable, but the implications were clear. ArcLight's board had been replaced and the era of Gregory Shaw was coming to an end. Simultaneously, Harper released her own statement, announcing a new venture funded by a consortium of tech pioneers and angel investors. The news sent shockwaves. The industry titans were shaken. And as for Gregory Shaw, he watched his empire crumble, his face pale, his eyes haunted by the realization that he'd played his last hand. In the quiet of his penthouse, surrounded by the echoes of his own defeat, he finally understood the meaning of hell hath no fury like a woman scorned. But that's not where the story ends. In the aftermath of Gregory Shaw's downfall, Harper faced the arduous task of rebuilding not just her own life, but ArcLight Innovations, infused with her own values and ethics. The journey was fraught with challenges, legal battles, and the daunting task of restoring ArcLight's tarnished reputation. Yet through it all, Harper persevered. She navigated the treacherous waters of corporate law, fought tooth and nail to protect her patents, and gradually began to turn the tide in ArcLight's favor. But the victory was bittersweet. The scars of betrayal ran deep, and Harper knew that true healing could only come from confronting her past. So alongside her father, she embarked on a personal journey of discovery, unearthing long-buried secrets about her mother's death and the circumstances that had driven her father into seclusion. The answers they uncovered were painful, but they also brought a sense of closure. And with that, Harper was able to forgive, not for Gregory Shaw, but for herself. As ArcLight rose from the ashes, stronger and more ethical than before, Harper realized that true power lay not just in dismantling her enemies, but in building a world she could believe in. The final story arc saw Harper come full circle. She emerged as a beacon of hope for young engineers, a symbol of resilience for women in tech, and a force to be reckoned with in the cutthroat world of corporate innovation. The girl who'd once questioned her dreams now led with unwavering confidence. The woman who'd been scorned now commanded respect and admiration. And the engineer who'd been silenced now had the world listening. As she stood overlooking the bustling New York skyline, the sun glinting in her eyes, she knew her journey was far from over. There were new challenges, new frontiers to explore, and new battles to fight. But with every step, Harper Wren grew stronger, wiser, and more determined than ever before. And so the tale of Harper Wren serves as a reminder that vengeance, though sweet, should never overshadow the power of resilience and the strength of the human spirit. It's a reminder that when life knocks you down, you can rise again, stronger and more brilliant than ever before. Because the truth is, hell may have no fury like a woman scorned, but it certainly doesn't stand a chance against a woman who knows her worth. That's all for today. See you next time. Fasten your seatbelts, gorgeous people, because it's gonna be a bumpy night. Yeah, I see you eyeing the exit. You think you're getting away that easily? Please, this is the author's work. You're never allowed to leave until I've ripped you new ones. Besides, where are you gonna go? There's nowhere left for you to hide. Not when every room has windows, and every window has a view. And trust me, you don't want to be anywhere else but here. I know things are getting a little real around these parts, but isn't that what you came for? To feel something other than that dull ache in your chest every time you open your goddamn laptop? You need a distraction from those EXEs who treated you like an unpaid intern. And maybe, just maybe, You deserve a little chaos after spending too much time locked inside listening to Taylor Swift's Ray recordings. Me? I'm tired of hearing about Adele's weight loss. What did that get us? 2 weeks ago, Netflix dropped the second part of Wednesday, and the entire world stopped caring about anything else. Well, guess what? You clicked on this video, didn't you? So you're as culpable as the rest of us. This show might have its flaws, but it's also a win for representation. Plus, Jenna Ortega carries the whole thing on her back like the badass she is. So shut up, haters, because I've got some news for you. Jenna is untouchable. Now, get comfortable and stay still, because I won't say this again, but I'm about to ruin everything. Alright, welcome to the end game. After a night of drinking, whoring, and gambling, Harper wakes up in her bed completely naked. Her first thought, where's Eugene? Then, how did I get home? A search of the apartment reveals no Eugene, but it does reveal her phone on the island countertop, with a series of missed calls from an unknown number. Who is that? We may never know, but we do know the answer to another pressing question. Is this the plot of 50 Shades of Grey, or is it actually good? Well, if you like your romantic leads with a side of substance abuse and Stockholm Syndrome, you're gonna eat this up. If not, I don't blame you. This hour spent $40 million to make and somehow managed to suck even worse than its trailer. Let's talk about that, shall we? Why am I so mean today? Because you did this to me. I used to have dreams. Dreams of becoming a famous actress, of winning an Oscar, of having children and aging gracefully while married to a man who makes me laugh. Then you came along and shattered every one of them. You know how many times I watched this movie during production? 0. Why? Because watching paint dry is more entertaining. And trust me, I hate you. Now, to quote the legendary Roger Ebert, there's no excuse for bad manners, even in a bad movie. So I demand an explanation. Why did you pay $40 million for this when you could have paid $2 million for the first one and saved yourself the torture? Well, don't worry, I've got you covered. Here are 5 reasons you should absolutely hate this movie. No, 5. The source material. If you hate romance novels or erotic thrillers, you're gonna hate this. So if you aren't a fan of women who fall in love with dangerous men, this might not be your cup of tea. Number 4. The pacing. This movie crawls at times and sprints at others. In other words, it's all over the place. Sometimes it feels like we are spending way too much time on a pointless side quest only to realize it doesn't matter at all. Other times it feels like we are sprinting towards the finish line with no idea what the hell is going on. Number 3. The characters. If you don't connect with any of them, this will feel like nails on a chalkboard. For instance, take Harper. She's supposed to be a former CIA officer, but her behavior suggests she's more of an impulsive vigilante than a highly trained agent. Take Andrew. Despite being a tech genius, he seems to make stupid decisions just for the sake of plot convenience, and don't even get me started on the side characters. Number 2. The plot. Well, it's simple. If you like your stories without twists and turns, you'll love this predictable mess. But if you like your plots with a bit more complexity, this will feel like a roller coaster that stays in the station for 90 minutes. And number 1, the acting. Well, it's atrocious. If you don't like watching talented actors waste their time on a bad project, you might be disappointed. But if you're a fan of train wrecks and cringeworthy dialogue, this might be right up your alley. Before we wrap this up though, let's give some flowers to the talented cast and crew who gave their all to bring this story to life. Even the most seasoned professionals can't save a sinking ship, but they sure as hell tried. So let's appreciate their hard work and dedication. As for you, dear audience, well, you got played. So what are you gonna do about it? Go out into the world and make your own damn luck. Watch another video if you dare. But whatever you do, please don't come crying back here when this one inevitably gets taken down. After all, I've got my own demons to wrestle with. But you know what? Screw that noise. I've made my point. It's time to cut my losses and run. I'll catch you on the flip side. Thanks for tuning in. Don't forget to support the channel. And always remember, I'm watching. Just kidding. Mostly. See you later. Bye. The old house stood silhouetted against the twilight, a monolith of secrets. Ivy clambered up its brick facade, weaving through broken window panes like a silent plea for release. Within its shell, dust motes danced in the last rays of sunlight, swirling around antique furniture, frozen in postures of vanished conversations. The air hung heavy with the scent of decay and suppressed truths. Harper and Adrian exchanged a glance. No lights were on, yet they could sense eyes watching from the darkness. "Second floor, left side," Rachel whispered, disappearing into the gloom. The ascent was slow and careful, each step echoing in the oppressive quiet. The floorboards groaned underfoot, as if the house itself was wary of their intrusion. As they reached the landing, a sudden crash followed by a low curse broke the silence. From the room at the end of the hallway, a figure emerged, tall and broad-shouldered, framed in the doorway. His face was obscured by the shadows, but his voice cut through the darkness like shards of glass. "What the hell are you doing here?" The newcomer stepped forward, revealing a face etched with weariness and suspicion. Harper noted the faint tremor in his hands, betraying a tension that mirrored her own. Recognition dawned in his eyes when he saw Adrian, and a flicker of relief crossed his features. "Adrian, you brought company," he said, his voice rough with disuse. "Let me introduce you to my brother Thomas." A ghost of a smile touched Adrian's lips. "Always the charmer, Thomas. But we have company." Thomas shifted, his gaze lingering on Harper before returning to his computer. "I take it you found Rachel." His voice was tight, devoid of any inflection. "She told me you would come." His eyes, dark and watchful, never left the screen. "Why are you here? Shouldn't you be abroad?" Harper asked, noting the faint accent that colored his words. He flinched as if struck. "Where else would I be?" he snapped, irritation edging into his voice. "Living in hiding, waiting for this nightmare to end," he added softly. "Just like you all." Before Harper could respond, a noise from the other room made them all turn. A crash, followed by Rachel's sharp voice. "I know you don't want to believe me, but I swear that's the only copy. That's why I came here. I couldn't bear it anymore. I had to prove it." Harper felt a surge of sympathy for the woman. In her desperation, she'd sought refuge in an old family home, hoping to unearth evidence to support her story. The irony wasn't lost on Harper. This house, with its secrets and shadows, had become a sanctuary for those haunted by the past. "If we're to believe her," Harper said, turning back to her companions, "then this house is our best lead. We just have to find the right place to start. And I think I know where that might be," Adrian said, a thoughtful frown creasing his forehead. Leading them through a maze of rooms, they arrived at what appeared to be a study. Books lined the shelves, but the room felt strangely untouched, as if abandoned mid-scramble. On the desk, a half-written letter lay beside a quill, frozen in mid-sentence. A single ray of moonlight sliced through the window, illuminating a small safe nestled in a corner. It seemed out of place, an intruder in the sea of antique furniture. "This wasn't here before," Harper noted, her gaze unwavering from the safe. "It's new, just like me," Thomas said quietly. "I came back hoping to salvage whatever I could, but there wasn't much left to find. So I started searching elsewhere." He gestured vaguely with his hand, his eyes distant as if seeing ghosts in the corners. "Did you find anything?" Adrian asked gently, sensing the turmoil beneath his cousin's guarded demeanor. "Some old documents, letters, nothing definitive. But there's something in this room that predates all of it. Something Shaw wouldn't have added." Harper's gaze was fixed on the safe, her mind already working. "We'll need access to that. Do you have a key?" "I do," Thomas replied, reaching into his pocket and producing a small key ring. "But it won't help. It's not the right one." A shadow flickered across Adrian's face. "We can force it," he suggested, his voice low. But Harper shook her head. "We don't know what we're looking for. If Shaw anticipated our arrival, it's unlikely he'd leave anything obvious behind. Whatever we need will be hidden in plain sight, disguised as something mundane." As if in response, a gust of wind rattled the window panes, and the room was plunged into darkness as the lights went out. "Of course," Harper murmured, her eyes adjusting to the gloom. "Why didn't I think of that before?" In the dead silence that followed, the only sound was the pounding of their hearts. The absence of light seemed to amplify the tension, twisting every creak and groan into a menacing threat. "Don't panic," Harper whispered, knowing her words did little to quell the rising fear within them. Reaching into her pocket, she retrieved a small flashlight, its beam cutting through the darkness like a lifeline. "Stay close," she said, her voice firm despite the tremor in her hands. As they moved deeper into the room, the beam of her flashlight danced across the walls, revealing shapes that seemed to writhe in the darkness. The musty smell of decaying paper filled their nostrils. "Over there," she breathed, noticing a faint glow emanating from a stack of books. With careful movements, she began shifting the books, revealing a hollow space behind them. Her fingers brushed against something cold, hard, and unyielding. A metal box lay nestled in the darkness, its surface tarnished, its edges worn smooth by time. The weight of its secrets pressed down on them, tangible and suffocating. "Here," Harper whispered, her voice hoarse with anticipation. "Open it." Thomas hesitated, his hand hovering over the box. "I don't know if this is wise," he murmured, his voice tight with tension. "We don't have a choice," Harper said softly, placing a hand on his arm. "We need to know what's inside." With shaking hands, Thomas lifted the lid, and a musty draft of aged air escaped, carrying with it the ghosts of whispers long past. Inside, nestled on faded velvet, lay a collection of letters tied together with a faded ribbon. As Thomas carefully untied the ribbon, the letters rustled like dry leaves, releasing their slumbering secrets into the stillness. One by one, they unfolded, revealing spidery handwriting and wax seals bearing the crest of the Ravenwood family. The contents sent a chill down their spines, painting a portrait of a family torn apart by ambition, deceit, and the insatiable hunger for power. As the first rays of dawn crept through the window, they finished reading, the weight of the revelation settling upon them like a shroud. The letters confirmed what they had suspected, exposing the rot that had been eating away at the Ravenwood legacy long before Shaw had arrived. "It's all here," Harper whispered, her voice trembling with suppressed emotion. "Everything we needed to expose them." In the growing light, their faces were etched with grim determination. They had uncovered the truth, but now they had to wield it. The question was, how could they ensure that justice once served would cast its light on all who had played a part in this grand deception? Shaw hadn't meant for Harper to find the archive. Hell, he hadn't even known it existed until he was dragged to that godforsaken library like a frightened schoolboy. But here they were, locked in a game of cat and mouse deeper than either of them had anticipated. Harper had cornered his sister, Rachel. She had the goods, whatever he'd hoped to erase. Now he had to find a way out of this mess. The trouble was, he'd never been much of a strategist. He excelled at focused bursts of terror, intimidation, striking fast and moving on before anyone could tie the incident to him. But Harper wasn't running anymore, so Shaw was starting at a disadvantage, relying on instincts honed during decades in the trenches instead of planning. And he could feel the patience in Harper's voice as she played him for time. But he had options. How many? For the first time since he'd left his corporate office in the Caribbean, Shaw considered his assets. Money. Well, that was a currency, not a weapon. Influence. That was centered around the political figures he'd greased over the years, but they weren't fools. And with an election looming, they wouldn't risk a scandal to help him. Power. That rested solely with the company. But if he brought them into it, the backlash would destroy him. So that left only to things he was good at. Threaten, strike, destroy. But those were desperate weapons, each more likely to draw unwanted attention. And there was a third option, the one he dreaded. Run. He could disappear, crawl into some hole he'd made earlier and wait this out. But he hated that. Didn't mean he had a choice. As the weeks stretched into months, he kept watching the news cycle about ArcLight turn from outrage to apathy. Investors cut their losses and walked away. Stockholders filed lawsuits against the board. But the media had moved on, distracted by another massacre, another car bomb, another atrocity. This wasn't how it was supposed to go. He'd planned a long con. Years of graft and greed were supposed to buy him immunity. Immunity that the U.S. government was legally obligated to respect because of the work he'd done for them. But apparently that wasn't a guarantee either. In a rented house in a nameless part of Nevada, Shaw tried to piece together a new life for himself, almost. It was the same for walls, the same sterile furniture, the same plastic plants, only the desert outside was different. It was lonely. He hadn't traded one prison for another. He'd simply postponed the inevitable. While he watched Harper consolidate her power, working from the shadows, Shaw watched her install Marcus as CEO, a puppet master from the grave, pulling the strings of a company she barely understood. In the press conferences, Shaw saw echoes of his own charisma, his own silver tongue, which had somehow been redirected into a weapon against him. He saw videos of Harper giving money to charity, bailing out investors who'd lost everything on ArcLight stock, spinning a narrative of betrayal that implicated him but pointed the blame at other doors. Harper wasn't looking for revenge. She was building a legacy. Every move she made, whether in public or behind closed doors, was purposeful, elegant, devastating. She seemed to glide through crises while everyone else flailed and fell apart. Shaw wanted to reach out, touch her, make her falter, but he couldn't. All he had was a cell phone with a burner SIM. No one in his family or former company would talk to him. If they did, they were careful not to leave a paper trail, just in case. And then, out of nowhere, it happened. A message on the burner phone, anonymous and traceable, except that Shaw recognized the initials. Skew. He typed back, hoping against hope that it was really her. Yes, it was. Rachel. After months of silence, they were reaching across the void. Shaw didn't bother to hide his location. There was nowhere left for him to run. He needed help. Any help she could provide was worth the risk. When Shaw arrived at the library, Harper was waiting for him. In the firelight, her face was etched with exhaustion, but her eyes burned with purpose. It was clear that she hadn't slept in days. Same with Adrian. Next to her, the ever-present tablet hovering like a second skin. Rachel was there too, but she was different. Her usual flamboyant style had been replaced by black pants and a white shirt, her hair pulled back tight. Even her makeup was minimal. There was a haunted look in her eyes that Shaw hadn't seen before. They led him to the back room, where he found the answer. The back room of the library was nothing like Harper had expected, and yet everything about it made sense. Thick blackout curtains sealed off the world beyond, casting the space into a twilight glow lit only by a banker-esque lamp with a green glass shade. The wooden shelves that lined the walls were not filled with books, but with manila folders, USB drives tucked into labeled envelopes, and hard drives stacked like bricks in a fortress of secrets. There was no dust here, only purpose, preserved in silence. Rachel Quaid moved like a curator of memories too dangerous to forget. Her fingers, thin but steady, trailed along a drawer until they found a rusted keyhole. With a click that sounded too loud in the hush, she opened a drawer and pulled out a single weathered file, sealed with wax tape. This, she said, placing it on the table between them, is what's left of my life before Shaw decided it was worth destroying. Harper didn't reach for it immediately. Instead, she studied Rachel, this woman who had once been Arclight's conscience, now forced into hiding like a ghost in exile. Her voice, when she spoke, was softer than before, touched with something close to reverence. Why did you keep it? Rachel met her gaze without blinking. Because someone had to. Because I knew the day would come when the rot would reach the surface, and people would stop pretending it didn't smell. Adrian leaned forward, opening the folder carefully, as though it might disintegrate under careless hands. What lay inside wasn't just evidence, it was indictment. Copies of internal audits stamped confidential, emails between Shaw and foreign intermediaries, lists of black budget payouts, and most damning of all, a contract unsigned, but notarized outlining the transfer of core Arclight technologies to Novarex in violation of multiple export laws. Harper read each page slowly, letting the rage simmer just beneath her skin, not boiling, but burning in quiet resolve. This is enough to bury him, Adrian murmured. Rachel snorted. It should have been. I gave it to a journalist once, a good one. She disappeared. The paper claimed it was a reassignment. I know better. Shaw had reach and teeth. Harper closed the folder and looked at her with something that might have been admiration, or kinship, or both. You held the match all these years. We'll be the spark. Rachel hesitated, her FOD cracking for just a moment. You'll need more than documents. You'll need someone inside. Someone who still works there. I have one, Harper said quietly. His name is Marcus. Rachel raised an eyebrow. Your old assistant? Harper nodded. Loyal, quiet, invisible to the men who run the place, which makes him powerful in ways they can't comprehend. Adrian smiled for the first time that day. Then it's time to wake the sleeping giant. They spent the next 3 hours mapping out a strategy more intricate than any software Harper had ever engineered. Rachel handed over a backup of her files, encrypted and air-gapped. Adrian cross-referenced every name, every payment trail, linking the conspiracy to government contracts and international bribery rings. And Harper, she stitched it all together into a story so damning, no PR machine could whitewash it. By the time they emerged from the back room, the sky had turned the color of bruised steel. Twilight had fallen, and the wind that whipped through the narrow streets felt sharper, hungrier, as if the world sensed what was coming. Standing by the SUV, Rachel handed Harper a small key. "There's a storage locker in Jersey City. Inside, you'll find the original drives, the ones with video logs, meetings, conversations Shaw thought were deleted." Harper took the key, her fingers brushing Rachel's in a silent vow. "You'll be protected, I promise." Rachel laughed bitterly. "No one's safe in this game, Harper. But if I'm going down, I'd rather go down knowing I finally picked the right side." As they drove away, the lights of the library faded behind them, swallowed by distance and fog. But Harper didn't look back. Not anymore. Instead, she stared out the windshield, past the flickering street lamps and into the shadows ahead where the final pieces of her revenge were beginning to fall into place. Shaw had started this war with silence. She would end it with fire. The truth had come for Shaw and Arclight, and it brought a storm that neither the company's money nor power could weather. Harper and Adrian's strikes exposed more than just Shaw's crimes. Each revelation pulled another thread, unraveling a web of corruption that stretched far and wide. Board members who once seemed untouchable got name-dropped in leaked emails. Lawyers who prided themselves on clean deals suddenly had offshore accounts under investigation. The very foundation of Arclight's success, built on layers of deception and bribes, crumbled with each passing hour. This wasn't just a fall from grace. It was a long-awaited reckoning. In the face of this tidal wave, Shaw retreated into his luxury prison. The high walls of his penthouse were supposed to protect him. The armed guards at the door were supposed to keep the wolves away. But how could steel and muscle stop a storm that had infected Arclight's soul? How could they shield Shaw from whispers in the corridors, the ones that spoke of betrayal, greed, and ruin? How could they shut out the ghosts of partners past, present, and future, each with their own score to settle, grudge to air, or secret to trade? As days turned into nights, the penthouse became Shaw's battlefield. His carefully crafted public image lay in tatters, replaced by a haggard shell. Gone was the man in tailored suits, smiling for cameras, charming everyone in sight. In his place was a haunted specter pacing windowless rooms. He'd turn from the panoramic view, teeth bared in a snarl, then revert to his glazed stare, lost in the maze of his own guilt. Each day brought new headaches. Stockholders filed lawsuits. Overseas branches shut down. Clients severed TIs. Regulators descended. But none of these were the worst blows. The most devastating attacks were the ones that went straight to Shaw's heart. Rachel Quad, the woman he betrayed and almost destroyed, resurfaced. She didn't sue him. She didn't seek revenge. She went to the one place he cared about, the one thing he couldn't buy, love. She did charity work in Tanzania, so she traveled there. For 2 weeks, she volunteered at a local school, sleeping under mosquito nets and eating peanut stew, all the while knowing that Shaw's vast fortune could easily buy her lavish accommodations, gourmet meals, and armed bodyguards. When she returned, she was a ghost. Her clothes were simple, her hair unadorned, but in her eyes burned the same fire that had once drawn Shaw to her. She delivered her verdict on every platform imaginable. "If you can look past my bruised skin and shattered bones, you'll see the real damage. A broken trust and a bleeding heart. You may ask why I didn't leave, why I didn't run. I stayed because I hoped he would change, because I loved him. But while he kept winning, I kept losing. The happy ending was just a page in his book. I hope you find yours." The public ate it up. Then there was the story Harper never wrote. She sent a few paragraphs anonymously to entertainment and news outlets. "Gregory Shaw likes to collect beautiful women like rare wines and keeps them aging in his cellars. He has a particular weakness for brunettes with curves. If you have worked for him and have a story to tell, contact us. Your anonymity will be respected. Your story will be our headline." What followed was a tsunami. Women from across the globe, some famous, some not, came forward with tales of seduction, coercion, and abuse. Meanwhile, the work continued. Adrian and Harper were relentless. Day or night, the rain-lashed New York windows framed figures hunched over laptops. Files poured in, confirming rumors of bribery, embezzlement, insider trading. With each drop, the once invincible Shaw lost another piece of his empire. In the end, it wasn't the regulators, the politicians, or the journalists who delivered the final blow. It was the forgotten cogs in the machine, the ones whose jobs depended on Arclight's whims, the workers who built the towers and filled the shelves. Shaw had taken for granted. They'd watched their pensions disappear, their stock options turn to dust, their futures outsourced to keep profits ticking. Now they saw their chance for payback. Leaks from within ArcLight picked up speed. Internal memos, sales records, confidential reports flooded the internet. These weren't leaks, they were time bombs, and Harper was the one who set the fuses. As the weeks passed, the once formidable Shaw cowered in his penthouse. Outside, the world moved on. Tourists visited the ArcLight Tower, oblivious to the corruption that festered within. New companies moved in, eager to fill the void left by ArcLight's fall. Life went on, but for Shaw, time stood still. He paced his prison of luxury, haunted by ghosts he could no longer outrun. Sleep offered no escape. Dreams replaced one prison with another. Where concrete towers touched the sky, where dark alleys echoed with laughter, where flickering candelabers cast dancing shadows on cold stone walls. Here, faces leered at him from the darkness, mouths twisted in eternal screams. The stench of stale waste filled the air, mingling with the coppery tang of blood. And in the distance, a clock ticked, counting down his final moments. One evening, as twilight bled into night, the penthouse door slid open. Shaw turned, expecting his lawyer, his doctor, maybe his chef. Instead, he saw Harper Wren. She stood framed in the doorway, a silhouette against the dying light. Her face was a mask of calm. "I hope I'm not interrupting anything," she said softly. Shaw recoiled. He tried to speak, but his voice failed him. He gestured toward the chair. "Sit, please." Still, he didn't recognize her. Her movements, her tone, even the way she breathed seemed alien in this gilded cage. She crossed to the balcony, her heels clicking on the marble floor. "You've built quite the prison here, Mr. Shaw," she said, turning back to him. "But sometimes the strongest bars are the ones you can't see." Shaw felt a chill crawl up his spine. Her next words struck him like shards of glass. "My congratulations," she said, meeting his gaze directly, "on building the biggest house of cards in the world. I hope you enjoyed the view from the top. It must have been exhilarating. It also must be terrifying to watch it fall." Shaw finally found his voice. "What do you want from me?" Harper turned away, walking back to the balcony. "Oh, I've gotten everything I wanted, Mr. Shaw. You don't understand, do you? You should have thought about that before you decided to play God. You never should have underestimated the human spirit, the lengths people will go to protect one another." Suddenly, the glass door slid open. Before Shaw could react, a swarm of men in dark suits filled the room. Their faces were grim, their eyes were sharp. "Mr. Shaw," one of them said, stepping forward, "we have a few questions for you." They took him down a different set of elevators, bypassing the lobby, ignoring the flashing lights below. At the bottom, blinding headlights greeted them. Shaw squinted. Cameras flashed incessantly. "Mr. Shaw, do you have anything to say?" one of them shouted. Shaw was shoved into a waiting car. He pounded against the tinted windows. "This is illegal. Get me out of here." The other man just smiled. "You wouldn't have ended up here if you hadn't done illegal things. Welcome to the club." In the end, the scale tipped. Justice tipped. Not because the punishment fit the crime, but because the truth had finally been set free. As the years passed, Harper moved on. She helped rebuild lives, mended fractured communities, and even saved a few troubled businesses from the brink. The scars remained, but so did the strength they brought. And Shaw, well, he traded penthouses for prison cells, Armani suits for orange jumpsuits. His legacy was tarnished forever. The name Shaw, once synonymous with power and profit, became a whisper of infamy and disgrace. In a world where shadows danced with secrets and truths waited in the wings, Harper Wren proved that the quietest voices could roar the loudest. Her story was a testament to the enduring power of resilience. For Harper, the journey wasn't just about taking down a titan. It was about lifting up the many who suffered in its shadow. In doing so, she didn't just become a force to be reckoned with. She became a beacon of hope in a world hungry for justice.